Dust clung to everything that morning, the wooden posts, the barrels stacked along Main Street, even the people who gathered outside the auction house. The sound of boots shuffling, coins clinking, and low whispers filled the dry air. Men stood shoulder to shoulder, some chewing tobacco, others tightening their hats against the rising wind. They weren't here for cattle today. They were here for her. Anna kept her eyes low. A tattered shawl slipped from her shoulders as the auctioneer gripped her arm, pulling her forward like she was a mule. She was only 21, but life had carved deep lines of hardship into her face. "Strong back, can cook, can clean," the man barked, lifting her hand as though she were a prize to display. "A fine servant for any ranch." The crowd muttered. Some smirked, others frowned, judging her weight, her plain dress, the dirt under her nails. Anna felt her stomach twist with shame. She had no family left. Her father had gambled away their land, and when the debt came due, she was sold like a broken wagon. Then came the rancher. Ethan Calloway stood apart from the crowd, tall and broad, with a sun-weathered face and gray in his beard. The richest rancher in town, people said. He owned more cattle than the rest of the valley combined. Yet his eyes were not on the auctioneer or the crowd. They were fixed on Anna. The bidding started low. Two men tossed out numbers, laughing under their breath. "She won't last a winter," one muttered. Another added, "Worth a week's wages at most." The crowd chuckled. $2, someone called. "3," another shouted. The auctioneer's hand tightened on Anna's wrist. $3, going once. 10, Ethan's voice cut through the noise. Steady, unshaken. The laughter stopped. Heads turned. $10 was more than some men spent on a good horse. The auctioneer blinked, then grinned. $10. Any higher? Silence. Sold. He shoved Anna forward. Anna stumbled, nearly falling, until Ethan caught her by the arm. His grip was firm, not cruel. For the first time that day, she looked up into someone's eyes. There was no mockery in them, only a quiet resolve. "You'll not serve in any house," Ethan said, his voice low so only she could hear. "You'll be my wife." The word struck harder than the gavel. Anna froze. She had been ready for chains, for orders, for endless labor, but not this. Not a man choosing her openly, in front of everyone. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Whispers rose like wildfire. The richest rancher. Taking her. She's a servant, nothing more. He's lost his mind. Anna's cheeks burned. She could feel every eye digging into her back. For Ethan, it was a declaration. For her, it was a sentence she didn't yet understand. As he led her away from the block, silence weighed heavier than the dust in the air. The town would not forget this. And Anna would not be able to escape the questions that now surrounded her. Why him? Why me? The gavel had fallen, but the real trial was only beginning. The ride back to the Calloway ranch was silent except for the creak of leather and the steady hoofs striking the packed earth. Anna kept her eyes on the horizon, where the land stretched wide and unforgiving. She sat stiffly behind Ethan on the wagon seat, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Every bounce of the wheels over a rut reminded her this wasn't a dream. She wasn't going to be someone's maid. She had been named a wife, though she'd never agreed to it. When they reached the ranch, the scale of his land stunned her. Fences stretched farther than she could count, cattle dotted the fields like dark stains against the dust, and barns loomed high against the sky. Men tipped their hats as Ethan passed, though their eyes lingered too long on her. Inside the house, she found order and silence. Heavy oak furniture, a stone hearth, and neat stacks of ledgers on the table. Not a trace of a woman's touch. No curtains, no flowers, no softness. Ethan cleared his throat. This is your home now. He spoke plain, like stating the weather. You're free to do as you please here. But freedom felt like another chain. Anna nodded, unsure what words would fit. By evening, the whispers reached her ears. She had stepped onto the porch, hoping for air, when two ranch hands passed near the gate. They didn't see her in the shadows. Can you believe it? One muttered. The richest man in the valley, taking a servant for a wife. The other snorted. Won't last a month. He'll regret it when the town turns their back. Their laughter cut sharp. Anna pressed her palms against the railing, her throat tight. The town's judgment was already rising like smoke, curling into every corner of her new life. At supper, Ethan sat across from her, the firelight catching the lines in his face. He ate in silence, then finally said, "You'll hear talk. Ignore it." His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. Anna wanted to ask why me. But the words stayed locked inside. That night, the storm came. Wind screamed through the valley, rattling shutters and shaking the roof. Lightning split the sky, revealing the broad fields beyond the windows. Anna couldn't sleep. Each crack of thunder pulled her back to the memory of being sold, of faces watching like vultures. She wrapped her shawl tighter, pacing the floor. Then came a sound that didn't belong to the storm. Hooves, pounding hard, too many for just a ranch hand's ride. She froze by the window. Dark shapes moved against the flash of lightning, circling near the outer fence. Voices, low, urgent, foreign to her ears. She turned sharply as Ethan entered, already buckling his gun belt. His face was calm, but his eyes were alert. "Stay inside," he ordered. "Lock the door." Anna's heart hammered. She clutched the shawl to her chest as the storm swallowed his figure at the doorway. For the first time, she realized her place here might not only be judged by the town, but tested by dangers far beyond it. The storm didn't break until morning. The sky was a dull gray, the kind that made the land look endless and empty. Anna had barely slept, pacing the wooden floor, listening for every echo outside. At dawn, Ethan returned, his coat soaked, his boots caked with mud. He placed his rifle against the wall without a word. She wanted to ask who had been out there, but his silence said enough. It hadn't been friendly riders. His eyes carried weight, and not the kind a storm alone could leave. "Eat something," he muttered, dropping into a chair. Anna set a plate before him with trembling hands. She tried to keep her voice steady. "They were close, weren't they?" Ethan looked up. For a moment, his guarded face softened. "Closer than they should be. Men who think a ranch without a woman is easier to take." He paused, as if realizing his own words. "They see me differently now." Anna understood. By marrying her publicly, he had drawn attention, made himself appear vulnerable, distracted, maybe even foolish. The richest rancher, chained to a servant girl. The thought twisted inside her. She had been nothing but a burden since the moment he lifted his hand at the auction. Later that day, she ventured outside, drawn by the sound of cattle lowing near the corral. A group of townsfolk had gathered at the fence, whispering. One woman shook her head, speaking just loud enough for Anna to hear. He could have chosen anyone. And he chose her. Heat rose to Anna's face. She turned quickly, nearly colliding with Ethan. He had heard too. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing, only placed a steadying hand on her arm and led her away. Back inside, Anna finally broke. "Why did you do it?" Her voice cracked, sharper than she intended. "Why me? You could have had a woman with land, money, a name. Instead, you. Because you were alone, Ethan interrupted, his tone low, almost fierce. Because I was, too. The words stilled her. His gaze was direct now, stripped of the calm mask he wore for others. I've built all this, he gestured to the house, the land beyond the window, but it's empty. A man can own the valley and still have nothing. Anna swallowed hard. Silence pressed heavy between them, heavier than judgment outside. She realized this wasn't pity he felt, it was recognition. But before she could speak, the sound returned. Hooves, again. More deliberate this time. Ethan rose at once, hand on his gun. They're testing the fences, he said, voice clipped. They'll come back tonight. Anna's breath caught. The danger wasn't gone, it was circling closer. And now, whatever bond had begun between them, it would be tested by fire before the town, before strangers, before themselves. Night fell heavy, without stars. The wind carried the smell of smoke before Anna saw it. She stepped onto the porch, shawl pulled tight, and froze. Orange flickers moved along the far fence line. Ethan was already saddling his horse. Stay inside, he told her again, though his voice lacked its usual steadiness. Anna's throat tightened. It's them. They want me to know they're close. He glanced toward the hills, where shadows twisted against the firelight. And they want the town to see I can't hold my land. She understood then, it wasn't only cattle thieves. It was humiliation. The whispers in town had planted a seed, and now men came to see if the richest rancher truly was weak enough to break. Ethan rode out, rifle across his saddle. Anna couldn't breathe until the hoofbeats faded. But silence pressed harder than the storm had. Every creak of the house sounded like a threat. She lit a lantern and sat by the hearth, waiting. Hours passed. Then, gunshots. Sharp cracks echoed through the valley, each one striking her chest like a hammer. She dropped the lantern, flames leaping at her feet before she smothered them with a rug. Heart racing, she ran to the door. Outside, the horizon glowed with burning grass. By the time Ethan staggered back, dawn was breaking. His shirt was torn, his arm bleeding. Anna rushed to him, steadying his weight as he nearly collapsed on the porch. His face was pale, but his eyes locked on hers. They won't stop, he rasped. Not until I prove them wrong. Anna tore strips from her own dress to bind his wound, her hands steady despite her trembling. You can't fight them alone, she whispered. You don't have to. For the first time, Ethan didn't argue. His silence wasn't the wall it had been before, it was trust. By midday, word had spread. Townsfolk gathered at the edge of the ranch, drawn by smoke and rumor. Whispers rippled as they saw Anna standing on the porch beside Ethan, her shawl dark with blood from his arm. One man sneered, loud enough for all to hear. She's no rancher's wife. She's the reason this place is falling. The crowd murmured agreement. Anna felt every eye on her, weighing her, condemning her. She wanted to shrink, to disappear. But Ethan's hand found hers, rough and warm. He faced the crowd, his voice carrying despite his wound. This ranch stands because she's here. You call her a servant, I call her my wife. And if you think to take what's ours, you'll face us both. Gasps broke the silence. Some shook their heads, others turned away. But in Anna's chest, something shifted. For the first time, she wasn't just a burden. She was chosen, publicly, fiercely. Yet the fire on the horizon still burned. And Anna knew the true test hadn't yet come. The night after the crowd had gathered was colder than any before. Anna sat by the hearth, unable to close her eyes, every crack of the fire sounding like a gunshot. Ethan slept fitfully in the chair beside her, his wounded arm wrapped in rough bandages. She knew they wouldn't have long before the riders returned. Near midnight, the sound came, hooves again, this time many, pounding the earth like a drum. Anna rose quickly, pulling the rifle from above the mantel. Ethan stirred, trying to push himself up, but the pain forced him back down. His jaw clenched. "Anna. I won't hide," she said firmly. Her voice shook, but the words held. "Not tonight." Lantern light flickered across the yard as dark figures appeared at the fence line. One called out, voice mocking, "Cowboy. You and your servant wife don't belong here. Walk away and leave the land." Anna felt her blood burn. She stepped forward, lifting the rifle so the lantern glinted against its barrel. Her voice rang out across the yard, steadier than she thought possible. "This is my land as much as his. And you'll not take it." The silence that followed was heavy. The riders hadn't expected her voice. Ethan struggled to his feet, joining her at the porch, his hand gripping hers again. Together, they faced the line of men. When the first rider urged his horse closer, Ethan fired a warning shot into the dirt. The crack split the night. The horse reared, the man cursed, and the others hesitated. They hadn't come for a battle, they'd come for fear. But fear didn't live in this house anymore. One by one, the riders turned back, muttering, vanishing into the darkness they'd crawled from. Only smoke and hoofprints remained. By dawn, word had spread through town again, but this time, the whispers carried a different edge. People spoke of the servant girl who had stood with the richest rancher, rifle in hand, unshaken before thieves. Some still sneered, but others nodded with quiet respect. That morning, Ethan placed something small into Anna's palm, a simple carved wooden ring, rough around the edges, but warm from his hand. "No auction, no gavel," he said softly. "Just a choice. Mine. Yours." Anna's throat tightened. She slid the ring onto her finger, her shawl slipping as she reached to steady him. For the first time since the auction block, she didn't feel sold or judged. She felt chosen. Outside, the valley lay quiet, the smoke cleared, the fences still standing. Life would not be easy. The town would still talk. But as Ethan's hand closed over hers, Anna knew they would face it together, not as servant and master, but as equals. The fire in the valley had burned away more than danger. It had left something new, a home, forged in defiance, and a love no whispers could undo.